Welcome back, loyal fight fans, to Boxing. Eat that shit up. Boxing, your home for all things boxing and MMA related. I am Tom O'Neill, aka Tummy Tom O'Neill, the human body snatcher. Please hit that subscribe button for us. Please hit that like button, and please tell a friend. I first wanted to say that I very much appreciate the comments that are starting to come in. We've gotten a couple comments. And that's a very good sign for me. I expect to get more. I would love if you guys would, whether you agree with me or not, I really do. I love the comments. As long as they're not like highly disrespectful, which I already, presume to get at some point, but they have not been so far. And I really appreciate you guys. If you, I would love it if you guys would leave either a question for me or a topic. Maybe that I didn't get to, anything like that we could have a conversation about. If you kind of leave something in the comments that you want me to talk about or address or, whatever about a fighter, upcoming fight, old fights, boxing or MMA, whatever your preference is, that would be awesome. And I'll definitely reply to them. I'll get back, in the next show. If you leave a comment for this show that you want me to answer a question or a topic, then in the next show I will do that, and I would love to kind of get that interaction going. So we did a show already this week, but the thing is there was a lot to get to this week, and I didn't want to make a really long episode. I didn't know how to do it where it would make it so long, because I really wanted to dig deep on that Lomachenko-Lopez fight, which I'm super excited for, and I think that we did that on the last show, but it took a lot of time to do that. And then we also had to go over, the results for the really stellar UFC event that was on the past weekend as well. But there's a few more things we need to get to. This upcoming UFC event, we have a couple picks that we want to make for that, so we're going to do that. Then I also really quick want to touch on the Bellator event that happened over the past weekend, which we did not do yet, because it was kind of a lackluster event, but, it's important that it was kind of historical, because this was the first MMA event that was allowed to happen and legalized in France. So an entire country now opened up to MMA that was not before. The world's starting to come around to this stuff, and boxing has been around for a while. I've loved, for hundreds of years. So I have loved personally, in just my lifetime, seeing how the MMA and the UFC has taken off, and it's already a worldwide thing, and literally it feels like week by week it gets more popular, especially during this quarantine. So that's one good thing about 2020. We've gotten some really great fights, and out of all the sports, the boxing and MMA, really MMA, but now even boxing is coming around to it, with putting on, not just putting on events, but putting on, we have a lot of good boxing fights that are coming up this before the year is out. But yeah, we want to make some picks for this. We want to talk about the Bellator event, so let's get into that stuff. So for the upcoming UFC event, that'll be UFC Fight Island 6. It's going to be the Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega. The Korean Zombie is 16-5. Brian Ortega is 14-1. The Korean Zombie is currently ranked, I believe, number 4 in the world right now. And this is a fight that has needed to happen for a long time to figure, because it's a good fight, because they're top contenders, that the fight, had been talked about for a while. But really, for me, mainly because we need to figure out this featherweight division, in the UFC. Because, even a guy that I really like, Calvin Kattar, he's been taking on fights of guys ranked underneath him. He took on that Dan Ige fight after Ige beat Barboza. And he's ranked underneath Calvin Kattar, who's ranked 6th in the world. He took that fight on, won that fight, where he had to come back, too, because Ige kind of put it on that first round. I think broke his nose. but Cater's knows. But anyways, you know, Calvin Cater's the guy. Then he's ranked 6, and these people ahead of him. You got, you know, these are the people that are ahead of him. Is you got the Korean Zombie, you got Brian Ortega, you got Zabit, and you got Yair Rodriguez, and then you have, you know, Max Holloway, the #1 contender, or should be our #2 or something now. And the champion Alexander Volkanovski. So that's the whole division. So this Korean Zombie Ortega fight, you know, it was supposed to happen already, kind of. And then the Zabit Yair fight, you know, so these are the top 4 guys. These are all the guys above Calvin Kattar and everybody below him. And they've been stuck where no one else can move on in this division until these 2 fights happen. And we figure out who's moving on, who's taking other fights with the guys below them, you know, or who's going to get Kattar next. And so anyways, we are going to go with Korean Zombie on this one. I am going to go with Korean Zombie on this one over Ortega. And that's, you know, that is, but this fight really is a pick'em because Korean Zombie's been on a tear. He lost that Yair Rodriguez fight, but that was literally within the last second, not even seconds, the last second, and he was winning that entire fight up until that last second of that last round, which is just unreal. What a great fight that was. That was a fantastic fight of the year contender. But he was winning that fight, you know, up until that happened with the weird up elbow. That knockout was, you know, hellacious. But yeah, he was winning that fight up until that point, and then he's gone on from there to get, I believe, 2 more consecutive wins. You know, when he had, you know, a bunch of wins coming in before that fight. Then he's got 2 more consecutive wins. I believe he's ranked 4th in the world in the featherweight division. Korean Zombie's 16-5. Brian Ortega 14-1. That one loss for Ortega came from Max Holloway, and you know Max Holloway is an all-time great in my opinion. So you know, no shame in that, but also he got really messed up, man, and they had to stop the fight. But I did come away thinking, wow, you know, Ortega is tough. He's tough as nails. Like he's not getting put out. You know, he got beat to all hell throughout that fight, really, and he was not put away. They had to stop the fight eventually because of swelling and cuts all over his face. But yeah, he's been, I think the main point here with the Ortega thing, it's no shame to lose to Max Holloway, but he's been off now for over 2 years. You know, that fight with Max was in 2018, you know, and we're steadily approaching, you know, 2021 now. So it's been over 2 years since Ortega's even been in the cage. So I never liked that for a fighter, you know, and especially with making picks as well. And, you know, even if it's a guy that I'm a big fan of, I want him to win, I pull through, but I never liked that. The ring rust thing, I never like to see that, you know, in boxing or MMA. Unless you're an older fighter, you're taking on, you know, your last couple fights, or you're spreading your fights out 1 a year, or you're the champion, you're spreading your fights out because you've worked your way up there. But listen, when you're a young guy that is, you know, a title contender, you're chasing other contenders, you're chasing that title, you need to stay active. I believe that this is key. I mean, we've seen this time and again. There are very, you know, Dominic Cruz talks about there is no ring rust. You know, well, Dominic Cruz, you know, he got stopped in that Henry Cejudo fight from not fighting so long. He's like the only guy who's really, I've heard talk about there's no ring rust. I believe there for sure is ring rust. And it's good to get rest and all that, but you're talking years out of the cage. That's no good. So I'm going Korean Zombie in this fight over Brian Ortega. And then, you know, on the undercard, it's not of that main event, you know, of the other fights on the main card, rather, are not, you know, they're not the most, you know, exciting. But this is okay, because every time I say that, I'm going to reiterate, as I have before, that the UFC puts on so many great events. I mean, you're guaranteed one stellar, you know, pay-per-view main card every month. And then even besides that, there's usually a free fight night card that's free as long as you have ESPN Plus, which a lot of people will come out of nowhere and people will say, "Oh my God, look at this card." And this is a fight night. Sometimes you can hand pick a pay-per-view of the year and say this fight night's even better than it. So they put on so many great events. This kind of seems similar to like how a boxing events you kind of usually are, where you have a really great main event here, which is fine. That's all I need. I've been a boxing fan, personally, but so that's all I need. They have the one great fight, Korean Zombie versus Ortega. Under that, not too much, but there is another fight that we're gonna make a pick on out of them, and that is the Caitlin Shikagian versus Jessica Andrade fight. Jessica Andrade moving up in weight to 125 pounds, moving out of strawweight, out of the strawweight division with Rose and Weili Zhang. Jessica Andrade, beat Rose Namajunas, which was, the win itself, like having a W over Rose Namajunas is super highly impressive. And, and then she got the title. Then they had a rematch, and she lost because, in all fairness, Jessica was losing that first fight. I think that in that first fight with Rose, that Rose's striking was so good and so phenomenal, and she, I think, was outright dominating Jessica Andrade. I want to be very clear about this. I think there wasn't even not one moment that Jessica Andrade had in that fight until, being in the clinch with her, or going for the takedown rather, and slamming her on her head, which won her the fight. All of a sudden, they had a rematch, but it's a little give and take. See, here's the thing. This was really interesting to me personally, and for what I made of the fights, because like I said, I felt, oh my God, Rose looked amazing until that 1 second that she didn't, and lost that fight. And I thought, ooh, you run this back and Rose wins that fight, every time, if you run this back. And they did run it back, and Rose did win, but I was surprised because, you take the two fights, Jessica won the first one, then she lost the second one. But I thought she looked a lot better overall. Her overall game and her overall competitiveness of being in the fight, I thought was a lot better the second time around when she actually lost, because she stayed competitive with Rose. Rose got, she has incredible striking. So Rose landed a lot more, was able to counter Jessica. But Jessica's fewer shots that she landed were so hard. So hard because she's so strong. She has a lot of muscle on her, especially for a woman in the strawweight division. So I think that moving up, might not be a bad thing for her. I mean, honestly, I think she'll still be competitive in the strawweight, but she lost quickly to Weili Zhang, who is the champion of that division. So that's probably got a lot to do, and then lost the fight with Rose, who's probably going to get the next fight. So this probably had something to do with her choice of moving up in weight. But I think she'd even be competitive still down there. I think the move up is not bad for her. I don't see exactly what the end game is in this move up to 125 pounds, because, what you're not going to, I don't think she's ever going to beat Amanda Nunes, Nunes is just, a powerhouse. Jessica's strong, but this is just, And Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time. She's one of the greatest fighters, period, out of female and men fighters in the UFC, in MMA, period. She's up there. So I don't see Jessica beating her. So I don't know, with that, because I know, Andrade wants another, title. I know she's still a hungry, young, she's not an over-the-hill fighter here. But That being said, I think I'm going to pick Jessica Andrade to beat Caitlin Shikagian. Shikagian, she's a good fighter, but she's coming off of the... it's hard to tell where she's at, though, right? This actually might be... I think it's a good chance that Andrade takes her out of there early. But there's also a chance that this could be a very good fight, no matter who wins. And here's why I think that is because, Caitlin Shikagian, I just think that it's hard to see where she is at. She's got a lot of wins over nobodies, on her way coming up, right? She's got a couple good wins in there, but then, she fights Valentina. She fought both the Shevchenko sisters, back to back. So she fought Valentina Shevchenko, obviously the phenomenal Valentina Shevchenko, who she lost to, handedly. And then she fought her sister, Antonina Shevchenko, and Antonina is not nearly on the same level as her sister Valentina. So this win it's like good. You got then you came off of that, you beat her sister, you got a win. But again, this is what I'm saying is I'm not taking away from her anything. It's just that it's hard to tell where you're at because Antonina Shevchenko, versus like a Jessica Andrade. This is a huge step up in competition, I think. And I think they just kind of put this because, Shikagian is not bad. And kind of see where Jessica's at because this is, again, a move up in weight for her. So, that plays a factor. But I think usually the question with the moving up in weight is, how are you putting on your weight? Because it takes a while to build muscle properly. And when you're weight cutting, or you're moving up in weight, like for instance, Jessica Andrade, she'd probably have to cut a lot of weight to make that straw weight class. So I think this is a good move for her. And I think she already had an unspeakable amount of muscle on her for being a straw weight, So I think it'll be a good move up for her. I think she gets the win over Caitlin. But we'll see where Caitlin's at as well. Even if she loses, is this very competitive? That'll tell me that Caitlin is a pretty good fighter. But those are our picks anyway for the upcoming UFC card. UFC Fight Island 6. We're going Korean Zombie over Ortega. And we're going Jessica Andrade over Caitlin Shikagian. Now, I just really quick want to touch on the Bellator event, like I talked about, because we didn't do this. There was a Bellator event that was on last weekend on Saturday, and they had it was like an all-day thing, which Bellator does sometimes. Kind of cool, but in my opinion, if you're gonna do that, really stack it up. It wasn't an incredibly stacked card. It just wasn't. But they put on like these back-to-back events. So first off, this was historic. Because this was the first MMA show that's been allowed to take place in France. So that's a big deal. And shout out to Bellator because, they're always in the shadow of the UFC. I don't care what anybody says. They are. They're always in the shadow of the UFC. But they have great fighters. They just don't have as many. But their great fighters can certainly compete with the great fighters of the UFC. They just don't have as many. That's all. That's really all there is to it. Bellator and Scott Coker, for whatever it's worth, if you're a person who cares about the fighters at all, and I'm not judging you if you don't, watch it and it's for entertainment. That's what it is. And these fighters do this for our entertainment. And believe me, they know that, So to each their own. But there is those who are not such casuals and are more hardcore fans, if you've watched the sport for a long time, if you've ever personally competed, chances are you have somewhat of, something in you that kind of cares about the fighters. You want to see good fights and you want to be entertained first, but then you also care about the fighters. And I think that Scott Coker is very good to his fighters. I think that means a lot. To me, at least, it does. Of course, I'm still watching the UFC fights if they're better that Saturday, I think that, but Bellator's been doing cool things. They've been I think they had some Sunday events so that, and I think this is smart, by the way. I think this is the direction they should go in, where they have like a Sunday event so they're not competing, directly with the UFC on Saturday. I think that's kind of stupid. The UFC, people are going to buy that. Okay, so then, you put your card on, either that Saturday before the UFC event or Sunday after it, so that, really big MMA fans can watch both, so that you don't make them choose between the two, because they're mainly always going to go to the UFC. Anyways, this Bellator France debut was nothing too spectacular, but it is historic. And I did want to talk about, and again with the comments, I'd love for you guys to comment on this. I had a weird feeling about this. Like this, if you think about this, this is the first time that MMA has been allowed in France. They have this show on. They headline. It's kind of a doubleheader event. So one of them is they headline. One of the main events with Czech Congo, okay, who is from France. They obviously, did this on purpose, and he is usually a guy Czech Congo, who is like very stone-faced, doesn't get worked up, doesn't look emotional. He plays his fights even sometimes pretty safely. He doesn't, go out winging and stuff. He's a very collected, calm kind of a guy. He seemed like he was a little bit, emotionally touched by this, because he knew what it was, being from France, that he's headlining the first MMA card there. And he lost. He had a good second round. I give him the second round, but that's it. He lost, and it's like, how does this look? For like, France is probably like, well, shit, after watching this. I just think that's what the fight game is. But man, it would have been good for the debut if he'd have won. People could, he could have lost the very next time after that. I could be wrong here, but the guy that Czech Congo fought, I believe that Czech Congo actually, that was their, I could be wrong here, again, leave in the comments, but I think that was their second fight, because I believe that Czech Congo actually beat that guy when they fought before, and now they go to France, his home country, and he loses there, kind of disappointing. And then the other headliner for that France card, because it was like a doubleheader, like the Charlo event. The other headliner was MVP. MVP versus something Houston. I forget the guy's first name. I'm not very familiar with him. MVP versus Houston, though. I know Houston. He's a Scottish guy, I think, and and not at all a bad fighter, but he's looking for the takedowns. MVP was stuffing them. Okay, I'm literally gonna go over the fight here. This is like kind of ridiculous. It's like the entire fight is MVP, bouncing back and forth as he does, never going in, literally ever going, just bouncing back and forth with his hands down as he does, and never going in with anything. And then the other guy who, I blame MVP more for this, man, for this lackluster performance. I do. But and I'll get into something else here right after. But I do, because the other guy, I think, that's a smarter game plan for him. MVP wants you to strike with him. He doesn't, because he's a very good striker. He's an MVP. I'm not a big MVP fan, but MVP is an elite striker. He is. So he wants you to come in on him, which is very... I'll touch on this in a second. He is no Israel Adesanya, but in that concept, he is like Israel Adesanya, where he is a striker, a kickboxer, who wants to counter your shots, who wants you to be aggressive with him, okay? So he's waiting for that. And in all fairness, the first round can be boring. I don't care because, this is a show for people that care about the sport. You can't be just, just don't comment if you're just watching. You're like, oh, this guy should have fucked this guy up. Like this is a sport, man. So if the first round is boring, I'm fine with that because it's a feeling out process. And listen, Michael Venom Page is, like I said, he's trying to, he hopes this guy will come in and start attacking him. But that doesn't happen, right? So give it a sec. But that never happens. And then he never changes his game plan from it. And the other guy never changes his game plan from it, which is not to be aggressive with MVP, which is to do nothing but shoot for takedowns, and then they're almost all, not successful. There was barely strikes in this fight. There was a couple. MVP won the fight, and he deserves to win the fight when you look at the fight and what strikes happen. But man, there's really not too many ways around this. This was a dull fight. This reminded me of Adesanya versus Romero. Only at least this fight was like, people like, oh, what will we get? Adesanya versus Romero, we were promised fireworks. And we all thought, without the promise from Dana or other fighters or that, we all thought that fight would be fireworks. Come on now. Everybody thought that. And that was just a horrible fight. A horrible fight. But anyways, that's why I feel a little bit like being picky here because with MVP, because I'm not the biggest fan of his, and I'm saying I kind of blame him for a lackluster fight and not so much the other guy. But when the Romero fight, I blame Romero because Romero's the guy that always comes forward. Romero's always an aggressor, and Adesanya's always a counter striker. So it's kind of, I'll be honest, it's kind of for the same reason. But I like Adesanya, so I like Romero too, but, so I blamed Romero there. But I'm blaming MVP here, so maybe I'm wrong about this. But it just seems to me, here's the other thing, MVP is coming off a loss, and I think it was his first loss. I think it was his first loss ever. I think he was undefeated before he fought Douglas Lima, who is possibly Bellator's very best fighter that they have. It's kind of between him, Patricio, Pitbull, and Gegard Mousasi, to me, are their greatest fighters. And so MVP fought Douglas Lima and got knocked out. And this is his comeback fight as well from that, And then this is a comeback fight from your only loss to show the world that you are coming back. And he's talking about fighting Douglas Lima again. I mean, for God's sakes, man, what did you show in that fight that you think that any human being who's at all reasonable should watch that fight and be like, you know what? You showed me that maybe this time it would be more competitive with Douglas Lima. You didn't even put on this didn't even show really anything. This didn't show anything. But he gets the win. I guess it was safe to get the win, but it's your comeback fight to show the world you're chasing a rematch with Douglas Lima. It's the MMA's debut in France for your organization that you fight for. And it just seemed kind of lackluster. So it's a kind of half and half thing anyways for me. I like the fact that, MMA is in France now. That's the important thing. I think, again, that is a very big deal. And I think that's a very cool thing that Bellator was able to do it. Usually the UFC has all the kind of resources and the spotlight to do those kinds of things. This was very cool that Bellator got to do this. But I just wish the fights would have been a little bit better, man. To be honest, I'm just being honest, talking as a fan. But yeah. So we made those picks. So we got two UFC picks there, and then we got the boxing pick for the Loma Lopez fight coming up. And then we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. And then here's the other thing is that I have a daughter. I work. I have a somewhat busy life, honestly. I try to work out a bit too. I have hobbies. I play my games. We stream on Wednesdays in between work and when I go to get my daughter. A lot of times that's the case for when we're streaming with the game. Which is also on this channel, which I also want to shout out. If you're watching this with the fight picks, maybe this is your thing, maybe you don't like it, but if you like having fun and you like a lot of silliness, and you like video games, please check out me and Ronnie playing the UFC 4 game, because we do that on this channel as well. But anyways, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the new subscribers. I really see now that, I feel like I've put in a lot of work with getting subscribers, and through people that I know, and having them subscribe. But there's definitely a few, unaccounted subscribers at this point. And that, really makes me happy. Because that means that people are telling other people, or people are stumbling upon the channel, however it may work. But I appreciate all you guys that are watching, and please start leaving some comments. We can do a whole segment. Listen, if we start getting more and more subscribers, if I'm seeing even just very slightly, if I'm seeing the subscribers go up week by week, and if I'm seeing people commenting now as they are, on stuff, replying to stuff. If I'm seeing that kind of stuff, I'm totally willing to do more, because I definitely enjoy doing this. Sometimes I have, I only have the times that I have, but, without picking like an exact day or time that I can be steady for, we can definitely do 2 at least of these streams like in a week. Especially if the subscribers are going up and you guys are asking questions, leaving stuff in the comments. Then we can start doing 2 of these. We can start answering questions. We can start having little, whatever kind of friendly debates about things. Yeah, I love that kind of interaction. Again, as long as it's not disrespectful, please feel free to disagree with me. Leave something in the comments, or agree with me and tell me I did a good job. It's always nice to have a pat on the back. And yeah, we will be back. But you guys enjoy these fights this coming weekend, as I will. And we'll see if we can get ahead on these picks, for God's sakes. This has been Boxing. I'm Tummy Tom O'Neill. Hit that subscribe button, mash that like button, and we'll see you next time.